There comes a moment in life when silence speaks louder than words. A moment when the one who once held power over your emotions no longer has a place in your heart. The narcissist never notices the final goodbye when it happens. They believe there will always be another chance, another argument, another moment to pull you back into their circle of control. But when heaven steps in, what they once used to manipulate you begins to lose its power. It is often not a loud farewell, but a quiet one. You did not slam the door. You simply walked away from the noise and allowed peace to return to your soul. The narcissist thought your silence was weakness, but in truth, it was the loudest declaration of strength you had ever made. Before we begin this journey, it is a blessing to know from which part of the world you are watching and at what hour of the day God has guided you to this message. Truly, it is a joy to witness how the Lord gathers hearts from every corner of the earth, uniting them in one spirit and in one truth. In the book of Isaiah chapter 26 verse 3, it is written, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee." That peace, the one that comes after chaos, is not man-made. It is divine. When you finally stopped fighting for someone who only loved your obedience and not your soul, heaven began to move. The door that once trapped you began to open. The narcissist often mistakes your kindness for confusion. They think compassion means captivity. Yet when truth opens your eyes, you no longer chase shadows. You begin to see clearly that some battles were never yours to fight, and some people were never meant to stay. The last time they saw you, they thought you'd return. They were certain their charm, their guilt, their false tears would lure you back. But this time, something inside of you had shifted. The emotional chains had broken. The spiritual fog had lifted. You could finally breathe again, and that breath was not borrowed. It was yours. Sometimes the Lord allows us to experience deep disappointment to remind us where our true source of peace lies. You learned that love without respect is not love at all. You learned that forgiveness does not require reunion. And you learned that freedom sometimes feels like loneliness at first, but it is the soil where new joy begins to grow. The narcissist cannot understand this kind of peace. They only know control, attention, and fear. When those things are removed, they are left with the emptiness of their own making. You walked away from a storm they created, and they are still standing in the rain wondering why no one is there to hand them an umbrella. But heaven saw every tear. Heaven saw every silent night when you asked, "Why do they not see what they are doing?" Heaven saw how you loved even when it cost you pieces of yourself. And when the time came, heaven also saw your courage to leave. So the final goodbye was not really your loss. It was their lesson. A lesson they will only understand when the silence becomes unbearable and the presence they took for granted never returns. The last time they saw you was the last time they would ever see the version of you that tolerated their games. The next time, if there ever is one, they will meet someone healed, protected, and no longer available to their deception. Because when heaven closes a chapter, no amount of guilt, charm, or manipulation can reopen it. The narcissist may still be looking for the old you, but that person is gone and will never return. The story does not end here, for every goodbye has a divine reason. In the next part, we will step into the emptiness they now face and what that silence begins to reveal. There is always a quiet aftermath after separation. The narcissist, once surrounded by your presence, your laughter, your energy, now faces a hollow silence. They walk through the same rooms, expecting your voice to echo somewhere. But all they find is an empty seat, a reminder that peace has finally taken your place. The narcissist never prepares for absence because they believe control guarantees permanence. They believe they own your reaction, your forgiveness, even your return. But what they fail to see is that every soul has a breaking point, a sacred moment when enough is enough. The seat you once filled with patience, prayer, and understanding has now become their mirror. In that stillness, they see the reflection of what they have done, and for the first time, there is no one left to blame. In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 1, Scripture says, "Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands." You tried to build, you tried to nurture. You tried to keep the peace, even when your own heart was crumbling. GZG. But the narcissist, blinded by pride, tore down every wall of safety with deceit, arrogance, and false promises. Now, as the silence settles, they sit in the ruins of what they destroyed, and the seat you once occupied becomes a symbol of everything they lost. That emptiness is their consequence, not a punishment from you, but a lesson from above. For when love is misused, heaven does not rush to replace it. Heaven allows the emptiness to speak louder than any sermon. You see, narcissists cannot tolerate stillness. They thrive in chaos because chaos hides their guilt. But when the noise ends, when the target of their manipulation walks away, they are left with nothing but their own reflection. And that reflection terrifies them. The seat you once filled with gentle words is now cold. The meals they once shared with you now taste bitter. Even the smallest objects, your cup, your Bible, your favorite chair, begin to speak without words. Every reminder of you becomes a testimony of what happens when pride goes unchecked. In that emptiness, heaven begins its work. God allows them to feel what they made you feel: confusion, abandonment, silence. The same emptiness they imposed becomes their teacher. And while they pace the floors searching for someone else to fill that space, no one truly can, because what they lost was not just a person. They lost peace itself. Yet do not think the emptiness only serves them. It also serves you. In your absence from their life, you begin to rediscover your own. What was once drained by endless emotional battles now begins to refill with quiet strength. That empty seat, once a symbol of pain, now becomes your altar of restoration. In Psalm chapter 23, verse 3, it is written, "He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake." And indeed, the Lord is restoring you. Every quiet morning without their voice becomes a new sunrise of freedom. Every moment spent alone becomes an opportunity for healing. You are learning that peace is not found in being understood by the wrong person, but in being chosen by the right God. The narcissist may sit in regret, but you sit in grace. Their emptiness is the beginning of your fullness. Their confusion is the evidence of your clarity. One day, they may return to that seat, hoping you will be there, but heaven has already moved you to a higher place. That chair remains empty, not because love failed, but because truth prevailed. The empty seat they see is only the beginning of their awakening. And what that silence begins to whisper next will shake the foundation of their pride. There comes a time when the one who once deceived must finally face their own reflection. The narcissist, who once thrived on control and illusion, now stands before the mirror of truth. For years, they avoided this moment. They covered it with noise, distractions, and blame. But when your silence entered the room, it became the mirror they could not escape. Your absence speaks louder than all your words ever did. They used to find comfort in your reaction, in your attempts to fix what they broke. But now, your calm distance leaves them alone with the one person they have always feared most, themselves. In Luke chapter 8, verse 17, the word declares, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." The truth always finds its way to the surface. It does not need your defense. It does not need your explanation. It simply waits until the noise fades and the mirror becomes clear. And now, that clarity is their consequence. For the first time, the narcissist begins to see their reflection not through admiration, but through emptiness. The mask they wore begins to crack. The stories they told about you no longer hold weight. The people they once used to validate themselves begin to see the inconsistencies. Heaven allows exposure, not for your vengeance, but for their conviction. They begin to remember the moments when they mocked your tears, when they dismissed your kindness, when they took your loyalty for granted. The mirror does not show them as the hero they claim to be. It shows them as they truly are, broken, afraid, and spiritually bankrupt. At first, they try to resist it. They look away, blame others, seek new distractions. They tell themselves that you were the problem. But the mirror remains. It follows them into every conversation, every sleepless night, every moment of silence. Because truth, once revealed, cannot be unseen. In Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13, it is written, "Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do." Nothing is hidden from heaven. Every lie, every manipulation, every false word was seen. And now, heaven allows them to see themselves as heaven has always seen them, not to destroy them, but to call them to repentance. But repentance is something a narcissist rarely embraces. It requires humility, and humility requires honesty. They would rather pretend than admit. Yet the mirror of truth does not lie. It shows every wound they caused, every relationship they poisoned, every blessing they forfeited. And when there is no one left to blame, the silence becomes unbearable. Meanwhile, your peace begins to glow brighter. You are no longer defined by their words or trapped by their emotions. You have become what they once pretended to be, whole. And that wholeness, that radiant calmness, becomes the ultimate mirror they cannot stand to look into. The more you heal, the more they see themselves. Your forgiveness reflects their cruelty. Your strength exposes their weakness. Your joy highlights their emptiness. It is not revenge. It is revelation. Heaven uses your transformation as a silent sermon, one that preaches louder than any argument could. And while they are haunted by reflection, you are comforted by restoration. You begin to understand that God does not waste pain. Every moment you spent trying to love someone who could not love you back has become the foundation of your wisdom. Now the mirror of truth is complete. What they see terrifies them, but what you see frees you. Because truth does not just reveal, it separates. It divides what is real from what is false, what is divine from what is deceitful. And that separation is coming next, a divine move that no human hand can stop, where heaven finally draws the line between the saved and the lost, the humble and the proud. There is a moment in every divine story when heaven steps in to separate what cannot walk together any longer. That moment is not cruel, it is sacred. It is the moment when light is divided from darkness, truth from deception, peace from confusion. You may not have understood it while it was happening, but the separation was never a punishment. It was protection. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14, it is written, "For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?" Heaven does not allow light to remain entangled with darkness forever. There comes a time when the two must part ways. The narcissist once walked beside you, but not in the same spirit. They shared your space, but not your heart. You walked in love. They walked in pride. You sought truth. They sought control. The separation began the moment you stopped participating in the illusion. You did not fight it, argue it, or chase after it. You simply stood still. And that stillness became the line heaven drew between your destiny and their deception. It may have felt like loss, but it was actually deliverance. Heaven saw what you could not see, that your spirit was being drained, your peace stolen, your purpose delayed. So God, in mercy, began to remove what could no longer stay. Doors closed. Conversations ended. Paths that once seemed familiar became silent. The narcissist thought they had discarded you, but in truth, heaven had extracted you. In Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19, the word says, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall the not know it?" The new cannot begin until the false has ended. The narcissist may see your absence as rejection, but heaven calls it redirection. You were not being abandoned. You were being repositioned. You were being placed where your heart could breathe again. The great separation often feels like loneliness at first. You look around and see emptiness where once there was noise. But that emptiness is not punishment. It is preparation. Heaven clears the space before filling it with new peace, new purpose, new connections that are not built on deceit. And while you are being renewed, the narcissist begins to experience the opposite. What once came easily to them now begins to fall apart. The charm fades. The manipulations no longer work. The people they used to control start pulling away. The attention they craved dries up. The energy they once drained from you is gone, and without it, they begin to wither. They cannot understand why their world feels empty, why their words have lost power. They may even try to return, pretending to have changed, but heaven's line has already been drawn. Once God separates, no human hand can reconnect what he has divided. In Proverbs chapter 26 verse 11, it is said, "As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly." Returning to what once broke you is not loyalty. It is spiritual blindness. Heaven will not let you go backward. You may feel the pull of old memories, the temptation to reach out, the ache of nostalgia, but your spirit knows the truth. That season is over. That chapter has closed. The great separation is not the end of love. It is the beginning of freedom. It is the moment when God says, "You have learned enough. Now walk forward." Every step you take now is guided, protected, and purposeful. You are no longer walking in reaction to someone else's chaos. You are walking in alignment with your Creator's plan. And as the separation deepens, something even more powerful begins to unfold. It is not just about leaving them behind. It is about what heaven begins to reveal next, the blessings, the restoration, and the peace that were waiting for you all along. After the storm, there comes a quiet moment, a peace so still, it almost feels unfamiliar. For so long, your heart was used to noise, tension, and walking on eggshells. But now, in this new space of separation, something begins to happen. Heaven starts to restore what was lost. Slowly, gently, and in perfect order. In Joel chapter 2 verse 25, it is written, "And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten." Those words are not poetic exaggeration. They are a divine promise. Every tear you cried, every sleepless night you endured, every piece of your peace that was stolen, heaven has kept record of them all. Nothing was wasted. Even the pain became part of the preparation. Restoration does not arrive all at once. It unfolds like morning light creeping across a dark horizon. One day, you wake up and realize that you no longer feel the same heaviness in your chest. The memories no longer sting. The anger no longer controls you. You smile again, not to hide pain, but because peace has quietly returned. This is how heaven restores, not by erasing the past, but by transforming it. What once hurt now teaches. What once broke you now strengthens. What once shamed you now becomes your testimony. You begin to understand why certain doors closed, why certain people left, and why you had to walk through certain valleys. Every event, even the painful ones, carried divine purpose. The narcissist cannot comprehend this restoration. They expected you to remain broken, bitter, and longing for them. But heaven's restoration is not about revenge. It is about renewal. Your glow returns. Your laughter feels sincere. Your presence carries peace. You have changed in ways they never imagined possible. In Psalm 23 verse 3, it says, "He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake." That is exactly what happens when heaven begins to restore you. Your soul, once weary and bruised, begins to breathe again. Your steps become steady. Your eyes look forward. You no longer chase closure, because heaven gave you clarity. Restoration also means rediscovering yourself. The parts of you that were silenced begin to speak again. You start remembering your dreams, your gifts, your passions, the things you once set aside to keep the peace. You begin to build, to create, to live. Each small act of joy becomes a sacred declaration that the past no longer owns you. At times, you may still feel waves of grief. Healing is not always linear, but even in those moments, you will notice that the grief feels different, softer, wiser, grounded in gratitude. Because now you understand that even in pain, you were being shaped for greater things. The narcissist may try to return, sensing that something has changed. They might say the words they know you once longed to hear. But your heart now has discernment. The same tricks no longer work because the healed version of you does not respond the same way. You no longer need their approval to feel complete. Heaven has already approved you. As restoration continues, your circle begins to change. New people appear, kind, genuine, patient souls who reflect the peace you now carry. These are divine connections, not forged through manipulation, but through mutual respect and shared light. You begin to see that not everyone was meant to hurt you. Some were meant to remind you that love can be pure. In Isaiah chapter 61 verse 7, it is promised, "For your shame they shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion." That is the essence of heavenly restoration, double for your trouble. Every wound becomes a doorway for blessing. Every loss becomes an opportunity for divine gain. And just as you begin to feel whole again, heaven prepares you for something even deeper, a season of wisdom and discernment, where your eyes will no longer be easily deceived, and your heart will no longer settle for less than truth. There comes a time in your healing when peace is no longer enough. Wisdom must take its place beside it. This is the season of discernment, when heaven sharpens your spirit so you can see what you once could not. The same eyes that once overlooked red flags now recognize deception from miles away. The same heart that once excused disrespect now protects its peace like a sacred treasure. In Proverbs chapter 2 verse 6, it is written, "For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding." Discernment is not suspicion. It is not bitterness. It is divine understanding. It is the gentle voice within that says, "Something is not right here," even when everything looks perfect on the surface. It is how heaven keeps you safe from repeating old patterns disguised as new beginnings. During this season, you begin to notice how differently you move. You no longer rush into relationships. You take time to listen, not just to words, but to actions, to energy, to silence. The lessons from the past have rewired your instincts. You now understand that love is not proven by intensity, but by consistency. The narcissist cannot re-enter this new version of your life easily. They sense your spiritual strength, and it unsettles them. Once, they could manipulate you with flattery, confusion, or guilt. But now, your boundaries are firm, and your peace is guarded by wisdom. You no longer explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer chase after what disturbs your spirit. In Matthew chapter 10 verse 16, Jesus said, "Be ye therefore wise as serpents, and harmless as doves." That is what discernment looks like, gentle but guarded, kind but cautious. You no longer fight to prove your worth. You simply walk in truth, and truth defends you. Your silence becomes a shield. Your peace becomes power. Discernment also reveals that not everyone who smiles at you is sent by God. Some come to distract, others to test, and a few to bless. Heaven trains your spirit to recognize the difference. What once felt like confusion now feels like clarity. You can sense motives before they are spoken. You recognize peace as the confirmation that something is from God, and unrest as the sign that it is not. This wisdom also changes how you view the past. You stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What did this teach me?" That shift marks the true turning point of healing. You realize that pain was a teacher, not a curse. It was sent to train your discernment, to teach you what love is not, so you can recognize what love truly is. In Hebrews chapter 5 verse 14, it says, "But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil." That is what has happened to you. Your spiritual senses have matured. You no longer need to touch the fire to know it burns. You have learned through experience, and now your wisdom protects you from repeating the same patterns. The narcissist, meanwhile, becomes frustrated. Their usual methods fail. Their charm feels empty. Their manipulation falls flat. They sense that the power they once held is gone. But it is not just power that has changed, it is perspective. You no longer see them as they once presented themselves. You see the truth behind the mask, and that truth sets you free. Discernment does not make you hard. It makes you holy. It teaches you how to love without losing yourself, how to forgive without reopening the door, how to trust God even when you cannot trust people. It is the stage where peace becomes your compass and wisdom becomes your armor. And as you walk in discernment, heaven begins preparing something extraordinary, a new chapter where restoration becomes abundance and peace becomes prosperity. Because discernment is not the end of your journey. It is the gate that leads to your harvest. There comes a season when the pain that once crushed you turns into peace that no one can take away. It does not arrive with applause or loud celebration. It comes quietly, like a gentle sunrise. This is the harvest of peace, the reward for your endurance, your obedience, and your faith through the valley of betrayal. In Galatians chapter 6 verse 9, it is written, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not." Every act of love you gave that went unnoticed, every moment you chose forgiveness instead of bitterness, every prayer you whispered in the dark, they were all seeds. And now, heaven allows you to reap what you faithfully sowed. Peace begins to flow like a river. You wake up with no need to rush, no urge to prove, no desire to explain. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like protection. You are no longer haunted by memories. You remember them, but they no longer control you. They have become stories, not scars. In this harvest, you begin to see God's justice unfold not through revenge, but through renewal. The narcissist, who once laughed while you suffered, now struggles to understand why their life feels so empty. They may still wear the same mask, but behind it is confusion, frustration, and a deep spiritual hunger they cannot name. What they once tried to destroy has now become a living testimony of grace. You, the one they underestimated, have become the living proof that peace is stronger than pride and faith is greater than control. Every storm they created only deepened your roots. Every tear they caused watered your growth. What they meant for harm became the soil of your strength. In Philippians chapter 4 verse 7, it says, "And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." That kind of peace cannot be imitated or faked. It is not dependent on circumstances. It is not shaken by rejection or delay. It is the stillness of knowing that you are exactly where heaven wants you to be. During this season, blessings begin to appear quietly, unexpected favor, new opportunities, genuine relationships, renewed health, restored joy. Nothing feels rushed. Everything unfolds in perfect timing. You are no longer chasing outcomes. You are walking in alignment. Heaven's rhythm becomes your rhythm. The narcissist may notice. They might watch from afar, confused by your calmness, frustrated by your silence. What they don't realize is that peace has become your power. You no longer react to their chaos, because chaos no longer exists in your space. Your boundaries are firm, Your faith is strong, and your focus is steady. This peace also brings gratitude. You begin to thank God not just for what He gave, but for what He took away. You understand that losing the wrong people was necessary to make room for the right ones. You no longer mourn what left, because you finally see why it could not stay. In Psalm 126 verse 5, it is written, "They that sow in tears shall reap in joy." This is your reaping season. Your tears were not wasted. They were holy. They watered the ground for this peace you now walk in. And this peace is not temporary. It is eternal, guarded by grace and built on truth. But the harvest of peace is not the final chapter. For even greater than peace is purpose. Heaven does not restore you only to comfort you. It restores you to use you. The lessons you learned, the strength you gained, the faith you discovered, all of it is meant to serve something higher. And in the next chapter, heaven will begin to reveal that purpose, the divine assignment that turns your pain into power, your wounds into wisdom, and your story into light for others still walking through the darkness you once knew so well. There comes a sacred turning point when healing becomes more than personal recovery. It becomes a calling. The season of restoration gives birth to purpose. You begin to sense that what you survived was not only meant to make you stronger, but to equip you for something far greater than yourself. Every wound you carried now becomes a doorway through which light can reach others. In Romans chapter 8 verse 28, it is written, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose." This truth is not just comforting, it is transformational. Even the moments that seemed wasted are now woven into your divine assignment. Nothing you went through was random. The betrayal, the confusion, the silence, they all refined your faith and shaped your heart for compassion. Purpose begins to whisper softly at first. You may feel a tug to speak, to write, to encourage, to build, to serve. It is heaven reminding you that your survival was never meant to end in silence. The same strength that helped you rise from pain is now the strength that will help someone else rise from theirs. But purpose requires humility. You realize it is not about proving that you have moved on. It is about using what you have learned to guide others out of the same darkness. You start recognizing the signs in people still trapped in manipulation, still questioning their worth, still carrying invisible scars. And because you have walked that road, your words carry weight that others feel deeply. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 4, the word says, "Who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble." That is the essence of divine purpose. Healed hearts become healers. You do not need a platform or a title to fulfill it. Sometimes, purpose is as simple as listening to someone who feels unseen, praying for someone who is hurting, or living in peace so that others can see what faith looks like in motion. The narcissist will never understand this transformation. Their world was built on control and image, while yours is now built on truth and grace. They may try to discredit you, minimize your growth, or mock your faith, but none of that matters. You no longer need their recognition. Heaven already approved your mission. Your purpose also redefines how you view success. You stop measuring your life by what you own or achieve and begin to measure it by how much light you bring into dark places. The very pain that once isolated you now becomes the bridge that connects you to others. Every scar becomes a testimony of victory. In Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10, it says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them." You were not just created to survive, you were created to serve, to shine, to rebuild. The lessons you learned in suffering become the tools you now use to build peace. The faith that carried you through the fire becomes the fire that lights your purpose. Purpose does not always make life easy, but it makes every day meaningful. You begin to wake up with direction, guided by quiet conviction. You realize that what once looked like the end of your story was only the beginning of a new ministry of hope. And as you walk in this purpose, heaven continues to expand your influence, not through fame, but through impact. People are drawn to your peace, your kindness, your quiet confidence. They see the light in you and begin to ask where it came from. And in that moment, you point them not to your strength, but to the one who restored it. But your purpose is not only about helping others, it is also about preparing you for the greatest revelation yet, that your destiny was never destroyed by what happened to you. It was hidden within it, waiting for the right time to bloom. And in the next part of this journey, heaven begins to reveal that destiny in ways more miraculous than you ever imagined. When the dust of battle finally settles, when the heart has healed and peace has taken root, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Destiny. Not the version of destiny shaped by ambition or desire, but the one heaven wrote for you long before pain ever touched your life. The revelation of destiny is quiet but unmistakable. It feels like suddenly remembering who you have always been beneath the noise of survival. In Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, it is written, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." Those words remind you that even in the seasons of heartbreak, God's plans never changed. What felt like destruction was actually redirection. What looked like rejection was simply preparation. Every step, even the painful ones, was moving you closer to the life that was meant for you. Destiny is not about what you lost. It is about what you found through the loss. You found courage where fear once lived. You found truth where lies once ruled. You found faith where doubt once reigned. And most of all, you found yourself again, not the version others shaped, but the one heaven originally designed. When destiny begins to reveal itself, you will feel peace even when the path is uncertain. The same voice that once told you to leave what was destroying you now whispers where to go next. You no longer chase opportunities. You are guided toward them. You no longer beg for doors to open. They open naturally because the right ones are now aligned with your purpose. In Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5, the word says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding." This is the secret to walking in destiny. Trust. You do not have to understand everything. You only have to follow what brings peace. Each step you take in obedience reveals more of what heaven has been planning for you all along. Meanwhile, the narcissist who once played the main character in your story becomes a background figure in your testimony. Their name fades, their memory loses color, and their power dissolves completely. They may still speak, but their words no longer reach you. You have moved beyond their vibration into a space of divine clarity where only truth can exist. Destiny also redefines your identity. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of pain, but as a vessel of purpose. You understand that your worth was never dependent on someone's ability to love you, but on heaven's decision to choose you. You were always chosen. The pain only revealed it. In Isaiah chapter 46 verse 10. It is declared, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done. That means your story was finished before it ever began. The narcissist could delay you, distract you, or discourage you, but they could never destroy what heaven already completed. Your destiny was sealed long before their deception appeared, and when heaven begins to reveal destiny, everything aligns effortlessly. The right people appear. The right opportunities flow. The right timing unfolds. You do not have to fight for it. You simply have to stay faithful. What is meant for you now recognizes you. You begin to look back and realize that the pain was never wasted. It was the path. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every tear was a stepping stone to this revelation. You were being trained in strength, in discernment, in compassion, all for this moment. The revelation of destiny also brings gratitude. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you." Because now you understand, the fire you walked through did not burn you, it baptized you. It purified your vision, refined your heart, and prepared your hands for the work ahead. But destiny is not the final reward. It is the gateway to something even greater, divine partnership. The moment when heaven begins to surround you with souls who reflect your healed heart and walk with you in purpose. And that, beloved, is what comes next. When destiny begins to unfold, heaven does not allow you to walk alone. One of the most beautiful signs that you are entering a new chapter is the arrival of divine alignment, the circle of souls who reflect light, truth, and peace. These are not just friends or companions. They are divine appointments, sent to walk beside you as you continue your purpose. In Proverbs chapter 27 verse 17, it is written, "Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend." That means heaven sends people who refine you, strengthen you, and help you stay true to your purpose. They do not drain your spirit or compete with your light. They honor it, protect it, and add to it. These are relationships built on respect, not control. On faith, not fear. After being surrounded by manipulation and deceit, this kind of connection may at first feel unfamiliar. You might find it hard to trust, afraid that kindness hides another trap. But heaven gently reassures you that these new souls are not like the ones who broke you. They are answers to prayers you once whispered through tears. In divine alignment, you no longer have to shrink to be accepted. You no longer have to explain your peace or justify your boundaries. You can simply be authentic, open, and safe. These relationships are mutual. Both hearts give, both hearts receive. There is no manipulation, no guilt, no emotional confusion. Just truth. Heaven also aligns your path with mentors and teachers who awaken your gifts. They speak into your life with wisdom that resonates deeply. Their words confirm what heaven has already been whispering to you in prayer. These are people who see your calling clearly, not because they want to control it, but because they were sent to help it flourish. In Amos chapter 3 verse 3, it says, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" This verse reveals that alignment is not about similarity, it is about shared spirit. You may come from different places, have different stories, and hold different experiences, but your hearts beat in the same rhythm of faith and peace. That is what makes it divine. The narcissist, on the other hand, begins to see this new circle and feels discomfort. They once held the position of influence in your life, but now they are replaced by people who bring out the best in you. That loss of access shakes them. They may attempt to reappear, but heaven keeps them outside the gate. The energy of deceit cannot enter where truth now resides. And as you walk in alignment, your discernment continues to grow. You no longer chase connections out of loneliness. You understand that loneliness is not a lack of people. It is a lack of truth. You have learned to wait for what is meant for you, relationships that come without confusion, love that feels peaceful, friendships that strengthen faith. In Psalm 133 verse 1, it is written, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." That is what divine alignment feels like: pleasant, effortless, peaceful. It is not about perfection. It is about presence. When people are aligned with your spirit, there is no striving. Conversations flow naturally. Support feels mutual. Encouragement feels sincere. The beauty of divine alignment is that it prepares you for even greater assignments. These relationships become your foundation for the next level of purpose. Together, you grow, pray, and build. Together, you become living examples of what heaven can do when broken people are restored and united through grace. And as your circle strengthens, something remarkable begins to happen. The same energy that once drew chaos now attracts peace. The same love that was once misused now multiplies. Heaven begins to trust you with greater influence. Because your heart has been proven faithful, this is the beginning of divine expansion, when your healed heart begins to touch lives far beyond your reach, transforming pain into power and isolation into impact. There comes a day when the narcissist finally understands, truly understands, that you are never coming back. It does not happen in an explosion or a loud confrontation. It happens quietly, subtly, in the stillness of their own life. When the noise they created has finally settled into silence, one morning they reach for their phone, half expecting a message. Nothing. They scroll through old conversations, searching for the warmth that once existed. But the words that once carried emotion now feel hollow. They drive past places where you once laughed together, and instead of joy, they feel a deep ache, a haunting reminder that time has moved on without them. In Proverbs chapter 5 verse 22, it says, "The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast." This verse paints the picture perfectly. The narcissist is now trapped in their own web, not by your actions, but by the consequences of their own deceit. Every lie, every manipulation, every selfish choice has come full circle. They begin to see that what they thought was power was really their downfall. They remember how they used to test your patience, how they assumed your love was endless. They remember your forgiveness, your prayers, your attempts to understand them, even when they refused to understand you. They thought your kindness was weakness. They thought your loyalty was naivety. But now they see that it was divine strength, and they will never find it again. The final realization is not dramatic. It is quiet, painfully quiet. They sit in the same spaces you once shared and realize that your absence is not just physical. It is spiritual. The peace that once filled the room when you entered is gone. The light that once softened their edges has faded. And now, every blessing you once carried for them has returned to you. Heaven has shifted the atmosphere. The narcissist's control has dissolved because the power they thought they had over you was never truly theirs. It belonged to your compassion, your endurance, your willingness to forgive. And now that those gifts have been withdrawn, they face the truth of who they are, without your grace to cover them. In Galatians chapter 6 verse 7, Scripture reminds us, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." And this is the season of reaping, not in vengeance, but in divine balance. The narcissist begins to taste the bitterness of their own choices. The charm that once won hearts no longer works. The lies that once manipulated now expose them. The people they used as substitutes begin to see through their mask. Meanwhile, your life begins to bloom in ways they never expected. The same faith they mocked now sustains you. The same prayers they dismissed now open new doors for you. You begin to walk in a peace that cannot be disrupted, a joy that cannot be stolen. You are living proof that deliverance is not just possible, it is promised. The narcissist, in their solitude, may whisper your name once more, not in anger this time, but in regret. Yet heaven does not allow you to hear it, for your chapter with them has closed. Their regret is not your responsibility. Their awakening is not your burden. In Isaiah chapter 43 verse 18, it is written, "Remember not the former things, neither consider the things of old." You are not called to look back. You are called to walk forward, into purpose, into peace, into divine restoration. And while the narcissist's realization burns quietly in the background, your life becomes a living testimony of redemption. The pain they caused no longer defines you. It refines you. The scars they left now shine as proof of what faith can heal. The narcissist finally understands that the last time they saw you was not just a goodbye, it was divine closure. A seal upon a chapter that heaven itself has finished writing. And though they may try to reach for what they lost, they will find only emptiness where your light once was. Because grace has moved on, and it took you with it. The silence that now surrounds them is not your absence. It is God's judgment. And the peace that surrounds you is not luck. It is God's reward. There is a stillness that follows deliverance. Not the empty silence of sorrow, but the gentle quiet of peace. It is the morning after the storm, the kind of calm that only heaven can create. You wake one day and realize that the heaviness is gone. The air feels different. The heart beats easier. The chains that once pulled you down have fallen, and your spirit is light again. This is not just recovery. This is rebirth. You are no longer the person who tolerated chaos for the sake of love. You are now the person who understands that true love never asks you to abandon your peace. The lessons were painful, yes, but they were necessary. For it was through those wounds that wisdom entered your soul. In Isaiah chapter 61 verse 3, it is written, "To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness." This is the promise unfolding before you. What was once ashes, broken trust, betrayal, heartache, is now becoming beauty. Every tear has watered a new beginning. Every disappointment has shaped your discernment. And now, you carry an anointing that can no longer be imitated or stolen. The narcissist story has faded into the background, but yours continues with new light. You begin to attract people who speak life into you, not drain it from you. You begin to experience peace that does not demand explanation. The same world that once felt small now feels full of possibility. Every sunrise feels like a gentle whisper from heaven saying, "You made it." In this new season, you are not running from your past. You are walking toward your purpose. You are not defined by what was taken from you, but by what was revealed in you. You now understand that some endings are disguised as mercy. God did not allow that relationship to continue because it could not survive where He was leading you. In Romans chapter 8 verse 28. Scripture says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose." That means even the pain served a purpose. Every silent night, every unanswered question, every moment of loneliness, all of it was preparation for your new beginning. You were not being punished. You were being purified. There will still be moments when memories return. The mind may wander to what once was, but this time you will not feel sorrow. You will feel gratitude because you survived, because you learned, because you found yourself again. That, in itself, is victory. Forgiveness no longer feels impossible. You do not forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because your heart deserves peace. And as you release the past, heaven fills the empty spaces with hope. The same God who lifted you from the pit now sets your feet upon solid ground. In Psalm 40 verse 2, it says, "He brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings." That rock is faith. That faith is your foundation. And from here, no storm can shake you again. As you continue forward, walk gently with yourself. Speak kindly to your heart. It has endured much, but it has also overcome much. You are no longer the wounded one searching for answers. You are the healed one walking in purpose. The narcissist story ends in emptiness, but yours begins in abundance. Theirs is the silence of regret. Yours is the song of renewal. And though they never realized that the last time they saw you would be the last, heaven knew all along, because heaven had already written your next chapter. Now, as you rest tonight, let your soul be still. The battle is over. The healing has begun. What was meant to destroy you has become your testimony. What was meant to silence you has become your voice. This is the dawn of your new light, pure, peaceful, and unstoppable. There comes a moment when the curtain finally falls and the show ends. The narcissist's performance, once filled with charm and convincing words, suddenly loses its power. The illusion that kept you bound begins to crumble. You no longer see their confidence as strength, their charm as love, or their promises as truth. It is the moment when you realize that what you thought was love was only control wrapped in false affection. When the illusion breaks, reality does not always arrive gently. It is sharp, clear, and often painful. Yet that pain is sacred, for it is the moment truth finally takes its rightful place. You begin to see patterns that once confused you. You remember conversations where every apology had conditions, every compliment had motives, every kind act was followed by manipulation. It is as if your spirit opens its eyes after a long sleep. In John chapter 8 verse 32, it is written, "And thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Freedom rarely comes in comfort. It comes in revelation. And revelation always exposes what was hidden. When your eyes opened, you did not just see who they were. You also saw who you had become under their control. You saw how you silenced your own voice to keep peace, how you carried guilt that was never yours to bear, how you accepted crumbs and called it love. The narcissist built their illusion carefully. They used charm as bait, pity as armor, and fear as glue. They studied your compassion, then used it against you. But when truth enters, even the strongest illusion cannot stand. It collapses under the weight of reality, and the mask they wore begins to crack. Now, when they smile, you see calculation. When they speak softly, you hear deceit. The same words that once melted your heart now sound rehearsed. And the strange thing is, they have not changed at all. You simply see clearly now. The spell is broken. In Ephesians chapter 5 verse 13, it says, "But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light, for whatsoever doth make manifest is light." Light exposes. It does not ask for permission. Once the light of truth shines upon deception, it cannot return to darkness. And though it may hurt to see what you refuse to believe, it is that very light that guides you to freedom. The narcissist, however, cannot live in truth. It burns them. They run from it, twist it, and deny it. For to admit the truth would mean to face the emptiness within themselves. They prefer illusion because it gives them control. But you have chosen light, and that choice has shifted the spiritual balance entirely. Now the narcissist begins to lose power. Their words no longer confuse you. Their games no longer draw you in. The silence they once used as punishment becomes your peace. The distance they tried to make you fear becomes your deliverance. This breaking of illusion is heaven's mercy. It is God saying, "Enough." The same charm that once blinded you now repels you. The same person who once seemed larger than life now appears small, fragile, lost. And in that revelation you are reminded that even darkness cannot stand against the truth for long. When the illusion shatters, something holy happens. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself to those who never listened. You stop defending your goodness to people who prefer confusion. You begin to rest in clarity. And clarity is where peace lives. The narcissist may try to rebuild their mask, to rewrite history, to convince others that you were the problem. But truth has already been spoken in the spiritual realm. No lie can outlast it. Their illusion has fallen apart. And now, without it, they stand exposed before heaven and before their own conscience. But the story does not end with exposure. It continues with divine separation, where heaven begins to draw the line between what must stay and what must go. Long before the final goodbye, long before the silence and the awakening, the seeds of control were already being planted. They did not come in storms, but in whispers. At first, it looked like care. It sounded like love. The narcissist made small suggestions, gentle corrections, harmless remarks, and you, being kind and trusting, believed them. But those small seeds would one day grow into a forest of control that slowly began to wrap around your heart. Control never arrives wearing its true name. It comes disguised as protection. I only say this because I love you. You should not talk to them. You do not need anyone else. Each phrase, though seemingly tender, carried a thread of bondage. The narcissist studied what made you smile, what made you doubt, what made you stay. They learned your weaknesses not to comfort you, but to control you. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 14, it is written, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." Evil does not always look frightening. Sometimes it smiles, brings gifts, speaks softly, and calls itself love. The enemy's strategy has never been loud chaos. It has always been quiet deception. That is how control begins, not through force, but through influence. A suggestion here, a guilt trip there. They plant ideas in your mind until your own thoughts begin to echo theirs. You stop asking questions. You stop trusting your instincts. You begin to feel that peace only exists when they are pleased. This is how spiritual control takes root, by making your emotional stability depend on their approval. Over time, those seeds grow deeper. They decide who you should talk to, how you should feel, what you should say. And if you resist, they twist your words, they play the victim. They remind you of how much they love you, how much they've done for you. You begin to wonder if maybe you are too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional. But you are not. You are simply under the spell of control that was planted long ago. In Galatians chapter 5 verse 1, it says, "Stand fast therefore in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." You were never created to live under emotional slavery. You were created to love freely, think clearly, and choose truthfully. And though the narcissist's control made you doubt that, heaven never stopped seeing your struggle. Each tear you shed was a prayer that reached higher than manipulation could ever climb. The dangerous thing about control is that it grows silently. You rarely notice it until it begins to choke the very peace God planted in you. But just as a weed cannot survive without sunlight, neither can deceit survive when truth begins to shine. Slowly, the light of awareness began to break through. You started to notice inconsistencies, patterns, lies wrapped in half-truths. You began to question what once felt certain. That questioning was not rebellion, it was revelation. And revelation is what control fears most. Because when a soul begins to see, it cannot unsee. You began to recognize that the love you were fighting for was only one-sided. You realized that real love does not demand silence nor punish honesty. It does not use guilt to keep someone close. Real love gives freedom, even at the risk of losing control. The narcissist never learned that truth. They mistook power for affection, obedience for devotion, control for connection. But those seeds they planted, every lie, every manipulation, could not take permanent root in a heart guarded by divine truth. And though it took time, you began to uproot them one by one. Every boundary you set, every prayer you whispered, every tear you wiped became part of the cleansing. What once grew in deceit was being replaced by strength. But as the seeds of control began to die, something else began to rise, a deep spiritual awakening that would change the course of your life forever. There is always a sacred moment when the heart finally awakens. It does not come with thunder or bright light. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed, like dawn spreading over a dark valley. After months or years of confusion, fear, and exhaustion, something deep within your spirit whispers, "Enough." That whisper is not anger. It is revelation. It is the voice of peace returning after a long exile. At first, you may not even realize it has begun. One morning you wake up and the air feels different. The same words that once wounded you lose their sting. The same manipulations that once confused you suddenly sound empty. The spell is breaking. The fog is lifting. For the first time in a long time, you can see clearly, not through emotion, but through truth. In Romans chapter 13 verse 11, it is written, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. This awakening is spiritual. It is not just your mind understanding what happened, it is your soul remembering who you are. It is heaven touching your heart and saying, "You have stayed in the darkness long enough." The moment of awakening is both beautiful and painful. You begin to grieve, not only for what was done to you, but for the parts of yourself that were lost along the way. You grieve the laughter that was silenced, the dreams that were postponed, the voice that was ignored. But within that grief is power, for every tear you shed now waters the soil of your healing. The narcissist may sense something changing, but they cannot name it. Their control no longer feels secure. The words that once made you crumble now fall flat. They notice your eyes, steady, calm, unafraid. That calmness confuses them. They test you, provoke you, bait you, but you no longer react the same way. Because once a soul awakens, it cannot return to sleep. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself, stop seeking their understanding, is the moment heaven begins to move on your behalf. You are no longer fighting for their validation. You are walking toward your own restoration. In Isaiah chapter 60 verse 1, the word says, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee." When that light rises, no deception can hide. Every lie loses its grip. Every false bond begins to break. What once made you weak now becomes the very lesson that strengthens your spirit. Awakening is not a single event, it is a journey. You begin to reclaim what was stolen, your confidence, your peace, your connection with God. You start noticing the small joys again. Sunlight through the window. Laughter that feels real, quiet moments that no longer ache. These are not random. They are signs that your spirit is healing. The narcissist, however, cannot understand this transformation. They see your silence as indifference, your calmness as arrogance, your distance as rejection. What they fail to realize is that what they are witnessing is resurrection. The version of you that lived under their shadow has died, and what stands before them now is reborn through truth. This awakening is heaven's gentle justice. You do not need revenge, for truth is its own defender. The peace that once seemed impossible is now your reality. And every time the narcissist tries to draw you back into their confusion, it no longer fits. You have outgrown their chaos. The moment of awakening is the moment of choice, and you have chosen freedom. You have chosen to rise. You have chosen to believe that what God has ahead of you is far greater than what you are leaving behind. Yet awakening is only the beginning. What happens next will shake the narcissist even more when your silence becomes their mirror, and they are finally forced to face the truth about themselves.